Did you know that for centuries, philosophy and the natural sciences weren't really these totally separate things? We often picture philosophers, just pondering stuff from an armchair.
Yeah, that's the common image.
But think about Aristotle. He actually dissected hyenas to understand biology.
Right. Or Descartes spending time studying, like, the insides of a cow.
Exactly. Even Kant, who you imagine just glued to his desk, right? He lectured on geography and anthropology. Kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? When did philosophy and science become these separate silos? And, well, what did we lose? So today we're doing a deep dive into a question that really challenges that separation. What does it actually mean for philosophy to be empirical today? We're exploring this argument that philosophers need to, well, get their hands dirty with more than just abstract thoughts.
That's right. Our mission here is to explore a really interesting paper, Empirical Philosophy. How engaging with empirical evidence is important for theory as well as practice. And the core idea is that for philosophy to really matter in the world, it needs to embrace a wider range of scientific methods, maybe even help shape them.
So our goal is to unpack why getting involved with empirical evidence isn't just like a nice extra, but often crucial for theory and for practice. And we want to make sure you walk away with some, well, pretty fascinating insights. Okay, so let's dig into this. Some philosophers are doing scientific research again, seeing it as, picking up that historical thread we mentioned.
A continuation, yeah.
But there's also something new here. They're using modern scientific methods.
And that blend of old and new is what makes it quite exciting, I think. It's probably worth pointing out, though, that a lot of contemporary experimental philosophy, or XFI as it's sometimes called, tends to model itself mostly on psychology.
Psychology, so like running experiments.
Often, yeah. Or using survey questions, mainly, trying to figure out what the folk, most people think about philosophical puzzles. They're intuitions.
Okay, intuitions. But the paper we're looking at says philosophers need other kinds of evidence too, right? For different questions.
Exactly. Other methods are needed.
So what else are we talking about? What other empirical tools?
Well, the paper argues strongly for looking beyond just psych, thinking about sociology, anthropology, history, other sciences too.
Why? What's the benefit?
Because empirical investigation, it has its limits, obviously, but it can really strengthen philosophical arguments. And crucially, it helps evaluate practical ideas for making things better. The bottom line is, if you have a theory that's meant to guide action, well, it has to actually work or at least have acceptable results when you try it in the real world.
Right. It can't just sound good on paper.
Precisely. Good theories need to align with sound practice. So the main argument we're exploring is that philosophers often have really good reasons to engage with empirical work, maybe even conduct it themselves, especially when looking at those practical theories. It's about moving beyond just, one person's intuitions.
It makes me think of David Miller's point about reflective equilibrium, the idea of balancing your judgments after thinking things through. He argues it shouldn't just be your own beliefs in the balance. You should look at what other people believe, why they disagree.
Understand the grounds of disagreement, yeah.
And use that wider picture to figure out which of your own beliefs are like the solid ones, the fixed points.
Which raises a key question, doesn't it? Why just rely on your own armchair intuitions? They can be shaped by your own theories, maybe even conflict with what others think. If you're trying to persuade people who see things differently, well, you really should consider their perspectives.
So finding out there's disagreement isn't a roadblock.
No, not at all. Empirical evidence of disagreement should actually prompt you to reflect more deeply. It's an invitation.
Okay, this next part feels really important. It's not just about what people believe, but how they might act.
Yes.
For these action guiding theories, sometimes you need info on how people will likely behave.
Think about it. If people understand they have an obligation to do X, will they actually try?
Good question.
And if they try, will it even work? Will it have an effect? What if, the best evidence suggests that telling people they have to do something will mostly lead to bad outcomes? Well, then maybe it's better not to tell them that. So knowing how people act can really shape what kinds of moral theories are actually useful to develop.
That connects to that old philosophical principle, right? Ought implies can.
Exactly. You can't be obligated to do something that's literally impossible for you. It has to be achievable.
So does this mean a lot of philosophical theories actually contain hidden assumptions about the real world?
That's what the paper argues. They contain empirical premises, assumptions about how things work that need evidence to back them up fully.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Like, if you argue people should buy ethically labeled goods because, say, it pressures companies to respect rights.
Okay, sounds plausible.
You need evidence. Will consumers actually buy those goods consistently? And how will companies really react to that incentive? Does it work?
Right. Without checking that, the argument's incomplete. It's just a hypothesis.
Exactly.
Mhm.
It needs empirical support to be established unconditionally. Let's bring this to life a bit. Maybe look at some examples from global health and justice.
Yeah, concrete examples are always good.
Okay, consider the Health Impact Fund, the HIF. It's a proposal from Aidan Hollis and Thomas Pogg.
The HIF, I think I've heard of that. It's about drug patents, right? But different.
Yeah, it's a really neat idea, a voluntary system. Instead of giving drug companies a monopoly, it rewards them based on how much their new essential medicines actually improve global health.
So, reward for impact, not just for the invention itself.
Precisely. No limited monopoly. Just rewards based on, reducing the global disease burden.
How would you even test something like that?
Well, Hollis and Pogg suggest starting small. A pilot program. Maybe 1 or 2 drugs, 1 country. They try to get pharma companies on board, convince them to lower prices. In return, they'd get payments based on how well the drug performs. Like for hemophilia, you could track the reduction in bleeds.
So you'd need to collect a lot of data.
Oh, absolutely. Track sales, use surveys to see if education programs work, even get samples to check drug usage, all to see if the incentive really leads to investments that boost the drug's impact.
Wow, that sounds complex. And probably expensive.
They estimated the pilot cost at least $500,000.
$500,000. Yeah, that's serious empirical work driven by a philosophical proposal.
It is. And another example, maybe a bit different, is thinking about expanding Kiva for health.
Kiva, the microloan platform, how would that work for health?
Well, could people lend money directly to individuals who need essential medicines? Or maybe support institutions working on global health?
Interesting idea, using an existing platform.
And researchers have already looked at Kiva's data to see how people lend.
Oh, what did they find?
It's pretty fascinating, actually. Controlling for things like gender, location, they found people tend to fund loans for those in greater need more quickly.
Really?
Yeah, up to a certain point, like an income threshold.
Yeah.
And they seem to care more about helping those further below that line.
So you could potentially replicate that kind of study for health needs.
Definitely. See if people would lend to those with serious health issues. It would give crucial data on whether that kind of platform is viable.
So these examples really show it, don't they? Even well-argued philosophical proposals need that empirical check.
Absolutely. You need to test them to know if they work, how they work, so you can actually embrace them and make them better.
But what's really interesting here, and maybe a bit counterintuitive, is that it's not just a one-way street, right? It's not just philosophy needing science.
Exactly. That's a crucial point. Just like philosophers might need empirical evidence for good theories.
Empirical researchers often need philosophy.
They often need theoretical inquiry, philosophical thinking to do good empirical research. It really goes both ways.
How so? Give me an example.
Okay, well, think about research methods. Every method has pros and cons, right?
Yeah.
Take randomized controlled trials, RCTs, often seen as the gold standard for evaluation. You randomly assign people to a treatment or a control group.
Right. Very common in medical research, social policy.
And they can have high internal validity, meaning you get strong evidence the treatment worked for that specific group in the study.
But there's always a but.
There are limits. For one, they can't totally rule out random chance, though statistical methods help. Then there's the Hawthorne effect, people acting differently just because they know they're being studied.
Or the John Henry effect.
Right, where the control group tries extra hard because they know they're not getting the special treatment. Researchers try to control for these, maybe with placebos or by increasing the scale, but it's tricky.
Okay, what else?
A big one is external validity. Often it's low. The results might not apply elsewhere.
Why not?
Well, you can't randomly pick people from the entire planet for your study. So if your intervention works in, say, one region of Kenya, will it work the same way in rural India or even urban Kenya? People, contexts, they're different. Unmeasured factors matter.
That makes sense. Generalizing is hard.
And then there are huge ethical questions with RCTs. Informed consent, potential harm, making sure benefits are shared fairly, avoiding exploitation, especially in developing countries.
Ethics always comes into it.
And of course, the cost. RCTs can be incredibly expensive.
Okay, so RCTs have limitations. How does philosophy help address these practical scientific problems?
Well, you need philosophical argument. For instance, to decide Which background factors are actually relevant for generalizing the results? Or to argue why maybe an RCT isn't even the right method here, perhaps something else is better or more ethical.
So philosophy helps choose and justify the method.
And interpret the results, yes. It helps ensure researchers are asking the most important questions in ethically sound ways. Think about humanitarian aid. Is it ethically permissible to have a control group and deliberately withhold aid from people in urgent need just so you can run an experiment?
Wow. Yeah, that's a deeply philosophical and ethical question, not just a scientific one.
Exactly. Science alone can't answer that. You need philosophical debate.
So this deep dive is uncovering this argument that researchers often need something more specific, what the paper calls mid-level philosophical work. Not grand theories, but something more practical, needed to actually measure things.
That's the idea. It's not about, debating the ultimate nature of reality. It's about the detailed theoretical work needed to take a concept like well-being or justice or autonomy and make it measurable for science.
So it's like building a bridge between the big philosophical idea and the scientific measurement tool.
Precisely. And creating that kind of mid-level theory is a contribution to both philosophy and science. It refines the philosophical concept and enables better empirical work.
Okay, let's use well-being as the example, like the paper does. It sounds simple, right? Measure how well people are doing.
Seems straightforward, but oh boy, it's not. The paper really shows how much philosophical spade work is needed.
How so?
Well, suppose you take a common philosophical view. Well, welfare is preference satisfaction, people getting what they want.
Okay.
That's not nearly enough for a scientist. You have to ask, which preferences count? All of them, just the ones people reflect on. What about preferences based on bad information?
Ah, okay. Lots of details.
And how do you weight different preferences? Is satisfying a small desire the same as satisfying a lifelong dream? How do scientists even find out someone's preferences, measure their fulfillment over time, weigh them up?
Right, you need a much more specific theory underneath preference satisfaction.
You do. What preference domains, areas of life are important to include?
Health.
Relationships.
Yeah.
Work. You need philosophical justification for those choices. Or take a different approach, an objective list theory. Maybe well-being isn't just preferences, but achieving certain objective goods.
Like what?
Things like having good relationships, gaining knowledge, appreciating beauty, achieving things, doing worthwhile activities, having more pleasure than pain.
Okay, a list of good things. How do you measure that?
That's the challenge. Take relationships. Do you just count how many friends someone has? Or measure the quality? And what even is a quality relationship? That's a philosophical question.
And knowledge. Is it just years of schooling or the actual understanding someone has?
Good proxies are hard to find. Is educational attainment enough? Maybe not. What about pleasure? Is it just feeling good? Desire fulfillment? Something else. Philosophers disagree.
And worthwhile activities. Defining worthwhile sounds very philosophical. And how do you measure if someone is engaged in them?
Exactly my point. For each item on that objective list, you need a mini-theory to define it and figure out how it could possibly be measured.
So the takeaway here is you can't really measure something complex like well-being without doing some serious philosophical work first.
Pretty much. To combine all these potential measures into a single index of well-being, the underlying philosophical theory needs a lot more development to become operational, something scientists can actually use. You can't just grab a measure off the shelf and pretend it's theory-free. Often, a well-justified philosophical theory of what you're trying to measure is essential for doing good science.
So we start this by looking back, seeing how philosophers used to be much more engaged with empirical science.
Historically intertwined.
And today, we've really explored this powerful argument for why that engagement needs to be, well, renewed and deepened, maybe now more than ever.
It seems clear, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Good theories, especially ones meant to guide action, need to actually work. They need to align with practice.
Which means taking the empirical evidence seriously, finding out if policies and proposals actually have the effects we hope for.
But just as good theories need good empirical work, that empirical work often relies on having a clear, robust philosophical framework guiding it. What are we measuring? Why does it matter? Are we doing it ethically?
So the really important question, as the paper puts it, isn't just, is this particular activity philosophy?
Right. The better question is, what is it important to do?
And engaging with sophisticated empirical work, developing those vital mid-level theories, that seems important. It enriches philosophy and it improves science.
It makes both fields better, potentially more impactful.
I think so.
So here's a final thought for you to consider as you go about your day. When you see statistics maybe about poverty or health outcomes or well-being,
Ask yourself, what philosophical assumptions might be baked into how those very concepts are being defined and measured? Could different assumptions lead to different numbers, different conclusions?
and how might digging into the philosophy behind the numbers help us understand them better?
And maybe, just maybe, help us ask even better questions about the world and how to improve it.